Hi everyone, my name is Tamar Meshel and I'm an Associate Professor and CN Professor of International Trade at the University of Alberta Faculty of Law in Edmonton, Canada. My areas of expertise are domestic Canadian and US arbitration law, international commercial arbitration, and comparative arbitration. So I'm really interested in everything that relates to the workings of arbitration, whether domestically or internationally, but in particular procedural issues in arbitration and the relationship between arbitration and domestic courts. This video is part of the ITA's What I Am Working On series, which showcases work related to international arbitration by academics around the world. So in the next 5 minutes or so, I'm going to tell you a little bit about two of the projects that I'm currently working on. The first project that I'd like to tell you about is a book on Canadian arbitration law that will be published with Lexis Canada in 2026. The name of the book is Arbitration Law, Statutes, Cases, and Commentary, and it's intended to provide readers with a comprehensive overview of arbitration law in Canada. The book covers the use of arbitration in all Canadian jurisdictions and in several practice areas, including commercial, family, employment, consumer, and international. The book offers readers a solid introduction to foundational principles of Canadian arbitration law, such as party autonomy, arbitrability, separability, and competence. In addition, for each Canadian jurisdiction, the book provides an in-depth discussion of statutes and jurisprudence governing arbitration agreements and awards, including key issues such as stay-in-court proceedings, limitation periods, non-signatories, appointing and challenging arbitrators, arbitral powers and jurisdiction, and enforcing and challenging arbitration awards. The book includes the latest legislation and case law governing arbitration in Canada and offers a unique comparative lens across jurisdictions and practice areas. The second project that I'm currently working on concerns the recently enacted Chapter 4 of the Federal Arbitration Act in the United States. The Federal Arbitration Act, or FAA, was enacted in 1925, and it mandates the enforcement of arbitration clauses that are contained in any contract evidencing a transaction involving commerce. And this includes arbitration clauses in consumer and most employment contracts. Congress has, for the most part, not adhered to repeated calls to limit the scope of the FAA. However, on March 3, 2022, the Ending Forced Arbitration of Sexual Assault and Sexual Harassment Act of 2021 became law and was codified as Chapter 4 of the FAA. So Chapter 4 renders invalid and unenforceable at the election of a plaintiff pre-dispute arbitration agreements in cases relating to sexual assault or sexual harassment disputes. My article examines the impact of Chapter 4 on the enforcement of arbitration agreements in the courts through a detailed analysis of over 160 state and federal judicial decisions rendered since its enactment in 2022. The article shows that due in part to Chapter 4's vague language and in part to divergent standards across state and federal laws, Chapter 4 has not been applied consistently nationwide. Instead, courts have diverged on a number of important issues surrounding its interpretation, and cases with diametrically opposed outcomes have already reached the state and federal courts of appeals, as well as the doorstep of the Supreme Court. As a result, there is lingering uncertainty as to precisely which disputes are excluded from arbitration, and similar claims may end up in arbitration or in the courts, depending on the forum in which they are raised and the state or federal laws that apply to them. This uncertainty undermines the purported legislative goal of keeping sexual assault and harassment claims out of arbitration at the election of the plaintiff, as well as one of the overarching objectives of the FAA, namely national uniformity in the enforcement of arbitration agreements. I'm hoping that this article will be published sometime next year, so please stay tuned for that. In the meantime, I'd like to thank the ITA again for providing this space. I thank you all for watching this video, and I invite anyone interested in my work to get in touch. Take good care, everyone, and bye for now.